I was told to move that, or there would be this big blank black space in front of my face with the camera. And while that might benefit you, I didn't want it to happen anyway. Welcome to Turner Retirement Home, folk. We're glad you got here and safely, and we're glad to see you. So welcome, welcome. All right, we need DH and Mike up here, seated. Yes, one at my right and one at my left. This is the judgment day.
Which side of the sheep and which side of the goat?
Well, that depends on your answers.
It's either right, I think.
Yeah, I'm an old goat.
Oh, I have a story about that I won't tell.
You know, I can't see these folks. I'm going to scoot.
Oh, okay, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that works.
See,
And the two of you are mic'd up, so we're in good shape, right?
Yes.
You're doubly mic'd because
yeah,
you're already mic'd.
Yeah.
He came, Mike.
He can't, yeah, all right. On July the 4th of 2013, that's your hint, I saw D.H. Shearer shot and killed.
That's right.
And so the first question has to deal with your hobbies and what do you enjoy doing to relax. Now, D.H., you can do both pre and post retirement.
Okay.
Okay? And I introduced you by being shot, and you died rather well, by the way.
Thank you.
That's right. But now you need to explain all that in brief.
Well, I'm dying up here. Well, actually, most of you who know me know that I was a Civil War reenactor for over 25 years, where we dress the part and portray the part and everything else. I was a Union chaplain stationed with the U.S. Medical Department. And anyway, a part of what we do are different battle scenarios. We don't recreate any particular battle because you need 100,000 people to do that. But we would do typical skirmishes and kinds of things. And yes, I took a hit, and yes, I died in front of a bunch of people. Typically, I can tell you the Confederates won that particular battle because I never take a hit and die when we win. You want to live to fight another day. But I want to say a quick word about what I have done since retiring. I'm as busy as I've ever been. I mean, I really am. It's just that the nature of some of the things that I have done has changed. I'm still active in a church. I mean, we drive up to Woodburn, and we've been up there. I've been teaching the Bible there, and Mike's been keeping me in line, and so that's worked well. But one of the things that I did when I retired, I joined a group called Bugles Across America. Because as a pastor, nothing chapped my hide more than to do a funeral for a veteran and have them push a button on a boom box and sound taps. And I just thought, you know, I'm not a veteran myself, but we can do better than this. And so I joined Bugles Across America, pass an audition, and so forth. So I am coming up on my 200th service for veterans, and you go out and you sound taps. Now, a lot of people will say, well, what a wonderful ministry you have touching bases with these families in their hour of need and so forth. But that's not the case, not the case at all. Because a lot of times I don't even talk to the families. I don't even see them. I may be posted off in the distance in a cemetery before the family even arrives. The ministry takes place with the military because our protocols require us to be on site an hour in advance of the service. And so we have a lot of sitting around time, you know, hurry up and wait. We have a lot of sitting around time. The vast majority of the services that I have done are with the Army National Guard, and you get to know these guys. And they end up talking about their girlfriends and their wives and their kids, and that is where the ministry is. That's where the ministry is. It's not so much with the family, it's with the military that you're waiting with to sound 24 notes of taps. And so I've driven a lot of trips down to Eugene. The farthest one on a special occasion, I did 5 services in one day down in Roseburg. But yeah, and I find that really rewarding. So that's maybe more than you want to know, but that's...
And it's more than I wanted to know.
And you also play with your lathe.
I do. I do a lot of wood turning. Yeah. I sold 12. Linda had a garage sale, and she sold 12 of my bowls.
I bought one. Right, she bought one. I bought one.
There you go. See there?
So I don't know where they are now.
But that's okay. Mike, what do you like to do to relax?
As little as possible.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know. I lay around a lot.
Okay.
I think I told you that.
Well, I wanted to tell them.
Yeah, couch potato.
I lathe around.
Kind of. I'm not quite as active as DH, but I still work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
But I enjoy that. So that's my enjoyment. But if I do anything to relax, it's probably watching a ball game. I'm a Yankee fan, and so I watch a lot of the baseball. So there you go. Boring.
We like you anyway. Okay. All right. The system that the committee that oversees this conference does is they pick 1 or 2 people and then let those people decide what they're going to talk about. So what I would like to have you two do is walk us through some of the process that you went through to decide what are you going to talk, what are we going to talk about, and then secondly, why these particular parables.
Okay. Start with.
Since DH was the first arranged speaker and then asked if I would join in with him, I just did whatever GH told me to do. So I just listened to
the
DH.
comments that I have are
I think DH first came with some ideas, and we kind of talked about what we were going to be comfortable with, and then we just kind of, I don't know, you could speak more to this than I about where you got those ideas from, but there you are. I just did whatever DH said. Well, why don't you do this one? I go, well, okay. You already did these, so let's go ahead and do those. So, you got something else to add?
Well, first of all, I got my stuff from Linda, so I didn't.
we have a bunch of followers around here, don't we?
But Mike, it's not like I assigned you in text.
No, you gave me some choices.
Actually, what we did, I've always kind of been into stories, and in some of my trips to Samoa to teach at Malua Theological College, I did special intensive sessions on, well, one year on the parable of the Good Samaritan and another year on the parable of the prodigal son. So I've just always kind of been into to stories. So there was that. So I thought, well, let's do something about the parables, because I don't think anything has been done all that recently on that. So anyway, so Mike and I get together and we say, okay, what are some relevant issues that we can address for senior citizens that the parables might speak to? And so we came up with issues of forgiveness, issues of changes within the church, things like that. And so the rest, as they say, is history. So we touched bases several times along the process. I mean, we both are at the Woodburn Christian Church, so it's not like we don't see each other. So it worked out really well.
And then last week we got together and said, okay, you're going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And we really kind of said, okay, which one am I doing again?
Right.
Just
And then after the first night, he
just
went
last
home
week,
and
yeah.
rewrote his thing. And
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Along the way here, feel free to raise your hand and ask questions, because I've only got 5. So, D.H., when you introduced parables on Monday night, you mentioned the word allegory,
yes.
and said that parables have been interpreted allegorically for centuries, and that Jesus even interpreted 3 of his parables allegorically. But I decided that I wanted to give us an example of an allegorical interpretation of the Good Samaritan. This is by Augustine, and then let the 2 of you comment on this. Okay? Okay. A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Adam himself is meant. Jerusalem is the heavenly city of peace, from whose blessedness Adam fell. Jericho means the moon, and signifies our mortality, because it is born, waxes, and wanes, and dies. Thieves are the devil and his angels, who stripped him, namely of his immortality, and beat him by persuading him to sin, and left him half dead. Because insofar as man can understand and know God, he lives, but insofar as he is wasted and oppressed by sin, he is dead. He is therefore called half dead. The priest and Levite who saw him and passed by signified the priesthood and ministry of the Old Testament, which could profit nothing for salvation. Samaritan means guardian, and therefore the Lord himself is signified by this name. The binding of the wounds is the restraint of sin. Oil is the comfort of good hope. Wine, the exhortation to work with fervent spirit. The beast is the flesh in which he deigned to come to us. And being set upon the beast is belief in the incarnation of Christ. The inn is the church, whose travelers are refreshed on their return from pilgrimage to their heavenly country. The morrow is after the resurrection of the Lord. The 2 pence are either the 2 precepts of love or the promise of this life and of that which is to come. The innkeeper is the Apostle Paul. The supererogatory payment is either his counsel of celibacy or the fact that he worked with his own hands, lest he should be a burden to any of the weaker brethren when the gospel was new, though it was lawful for him to live by the gospel. Now, aren't you glad that you didn't try to pull that stuff on us?
Go ahead.
Over to my left is a book that explains all this.
Yeah.
The problem with allegory in all of this is that a lawyer asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" And then you get this big, long explanation from Augustine saying that this story is not about neighbor being a neighbor at all. It's about the history of redemption. A man is traveling down and all this other kind of stuff. And it completely ignores the context of what's going on. If I'm going to be a faithful expositor of the word, I can't do that. I can't take, one of the cartoons was about taking things out of context. I can't do that. I have to let the scripture speaks for itself. Otherwise, things like the parables become, as I said the first night, putty in the hands of the interpreter. It's not I don't have the liberty to make it say what I want it to say. What I have to do is to bring my life in accordance with what Jesus is saying. You see what I'm saying? And so that's why I can't do that. So, and then let me say, it's interesting. The question is, it started with who is my neighbor? But when Jesus was done telling the story, that's not what he said. He says, now which one proved to be a neighbor? Mm-hmm. And it's not the same question. And it shows how Jesus used this story to kind of bring this lawyer around to where he wanted him to be. But you can read about that. Mm-hmm. $10 for a special September Fest price, $9 if you let me sign it.
Yeah, get him to sign it, yeah. Any other
You know, that may be all well and good to see all of that.
It probably isn't, but go ahead.
But that we can read a lot into it and how it speaks to us in different ways. But we you know, to truly understand what Jesus is saying, we have to understand it in context. Right. And yeah, we can try to take allegory, but the problem with that is you have to start making stuff up, usually, to make it fit. And therefore, you know, then we start seeing Paul in it, and Paul's not even alive, but we see all this other stuff, and so we just kind of draw it all in just to make it fit into what we perceive to be the meaning. And it takes us completely away from the original. And honestly, we've got to get back and study the original intent and message rather than trying to put our stuff into it.
Yep. Questions, comments? The tragedy, of course, was that was the most popular way to interpret parables for about 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And in the Middle Ages, the medieval church, that held sway. So I'm glad that's done. Okay, Mike, over here. Concerning the message on forgiveness last night, I'd like to have you comment on a statement that I have heard or read. Forgiveness is freeing myself from the emotional hold the person who hurt me has over me.
When I think of forgiveness, I think of the things that I can control when I forgive somebody. And forgiveness to me is an action. I can control my actions. And many times I cannot control my emotions, but my emotions will follow my actions. My emotions will finally get there. But, you know, we cry when we have no reason to cry. I mean, just our emotions get a hold of us, and we're joyful at times when we can't necessarily make ourselves joyful. We can't necessarily really control our emotions to the point where we have them always boxed in. They just overwhelm us sometimes. But I do control my actions. And so I think the first step in forgiveness is the action, taking the action. This past, at the beginning of the year, back in January, actually it might have been the last day of the year, it may have been December, Shearer was out walking our dog in our neighborhood. And a dog had gotten loose from a house. She was taking down her Christmas decorations. The door got left open, and it was a pit bull mix rescue dog, and attacked our dog while Shearer was walking the dog. And so, fortunately, there was a neighbor there, came over and got the dog, the let loose of our dog, and we had to rush our dog off to the vet. And we had a big vet bill. And when we got it and we looked at it and going, this lady needs to help us out on this bill. And so we made a copy of it, and Cheryl went over there the next day and showed her the vet bill. And we don't expect you to pay all of this, but you know, we think that you ought to take on some responsibility in this. And we left it with her. And we thought about it over the weekend. And I finally said to Cheryl, you know what? It's been a tough year for everybody. You know, last year was just one of those years we all want to forget. And we don't know what her financial situation was or anything like that, but we knew what our financial situation was. And I said, we can handle this. And we don't know what's going on with her and her life and everything that's going on. She seemed to be a single mom, am I right? Single mother. And so we just thought, I just said, Cheryl, why don't we just tell her it's okay? Is that all right with you? That we'll just take care of it. And Cheryl said, yeah, well, let's do that. So I called her up that Monday. I think this happened on a Friday or Saturday or whatever it was. And anyway, I called her up Monday and I introduced myself to her on the phone. And I said, here, I'm Mike Smith. My wife was walking our dog. Your dog attacked her and everything. And I could hear the tension immediately on the other end of the line. You know, oh boy, here it comes. Kind of, what's he going to say? And so I just immediately, you know, said to her, I said, I want you to know, last year, we understand, it's a bad year, it's a tough year for everybody. Well, I don't know what your situation is and everything, but I know what our situation is. God has blessed us. I still have a job, thankfully. Church is still paying me. And we don't want you to worry about this vet bill. We're going to take care of it. It's okay. It's forgiveness. I said, and I told her, I said, it's taken care of. We've been blessed, and we're going to pass that along to you and everything. She just started sobbing on the phone. And she just started crying. She just said, I didn't know how I was going to do this. I had no idea. It has been a tough year. Emotionally, was I ready to do that? I don't know. Our dog still had stitches and scars and traumatized by the whole thing, and we don't walk by that house, you know, and I don't go by there thinking, you know, I let her off the hook. I have a good feeling because I did something. Forgiveness was something that I did. It was an action. And then the emotion, the everything else eventually catches up to that. So yes, I think eventually it's that emotional release, but I don't know that I can expect that immediately when I'm offering forgiveness. But hopefully at some point it's just by saying to somebody, and it's an action. I go up to somebody and say, I'm not holding you accountable for this. I'm not expecting anything back from you. Yes, I feel the hurt, I feel the pain, but I want you to know I'm moving on and I'm letting that go. And I change my focus and I just go down a different road. And hopefully, and I believe God heals us in this way, the emotions follow. But I don't know that I can expect that immediately.
Yeah, I just don't disagree with that at all. There are probably a lot of occasions where forgiveness takes some time. I mean, the process of giving forgiveness, offering forgiveness, takes some time for me in the process of doing it, simply because I've been hurt and I've got to process that.
But I think the first step is to take the action.
Sure.
It's just to offer it and just say, I'm not going to do it. And I remember, you know, a counselor that I knew back in Tennessee, he says, you do something and everything else follows. Your actions need to lead the way. We often think, I got to wait until I feel right about it before I'm going to do something about it. Well, if I wait until I feel good about it, it ain't going to happen. I mean, it's just not going to happen. I'm going to continue. It's like when you feel sad and everything, and I don't feel like I want to go out and do something cheery. Well, then you're just going to swallow and be in that depression, that state constantly. The only way that you get out of that is say, okay, I'm actually going to go do something that's going to try to cheer me up. Maybe my emotions are going to come along, maybe not, but I'm going to go through that. And the counselor said, eventually, you continue to do that thing. You continue to do the action. Eventually, your emotions change with you and catch up.
So when Jesus says, forgive,
It's an action.
he doesn't say anything about, wait till you feel like,
Yeah.
like you need to do,
Yeah.
do it.
Well, and it's the same thing with love, right? Loving your enemies. If I wait till I feel good about them, I'm not necessarily ever going to love them. And we think about it being an emotion, and it's by treating them kindly. I don't know. You got anything you want to add to that?
No.
Okay.
Well,
We forgive you for
no,
that.
I would just,
you do,
add
see?
that, there are a lot of different contexts and circumstances that come into play into this. I mean, what if the person who has grieved you has died?
Yeah.
Or has Alzheimer's? Or is just unrepentant? In the story you gave, this woman knew that her pit bull had harmed you, and she, in her heart, felt some level of responsibility. Well, there are people who have harmed me who feel no sense of responsibility whatsoever. And so that introduces a whole different dynamic to forgiveness. But ultimately, where I come from, and you touched on this in your message, which I appreciated, ultimately where it comes from is that forgiveness is something that has to take place within me, otherwise I end up becoming the victim. I end up being the one carrying it. I'm not hurting them at all, I'm just hurting myself. So there has to be some kind of a letting go. And I think you brought that out really well.
Yeah. You mentioned yesterday when we were chatting for a moment, well, I think you mentioned it in your message too, that reconciliation requires two people, but forgiveness only requires one, and that's me. There were a couple of hands back in the back here.
One of the things that
Why don't you stand up and speak up, would you please? Because I have to hear this question to relay it.
I once heard, and I believe it's true, when we forgive, that person still has to suffer the consequences of their actions. Our forgiveness does not remove their consequences.
Our forgiveness does not remove their consequences. Okay? Yeah.
Well, and I think I tried to touch on that yesterday as well in the messages. It's not the same as pardon, So they still have to face, if there's anything that they're facing because of the result of what they've done. And, I don't necessarily relieve them of that civic responsibility or the consequences of what they have done. But I'm just relieving my part of that, and I'm not expecting anything to happen back to me. I'm not going to wait for them to do something in order for me to move forward and everything. I understand that, but at the same time, I'm not looking, God's going to get you in the end kind of thing. You're going to get your just payment about this. I just need to let it go. And, the couple of scriptures that I did use yesterday was about, dropping off and leaving behind the things that are clinging to us and holding us back, and just letting go of the past and straining and moving forward into the future. And I just don't let these things cling to me. And I do want to point out what DH is saying. There are times that there is never going to be, with those that have passed on, and they have harmed you, and there's no way that they're ever going to be able to, you're not ever going to get any kind of acknowledgement about that. It is up to us to just take that action and move forward.
Yes?
Well, I've been really hurt before, but the Holy Spirit reminds me that Jesus forgave me. And those people that feel no guilt or remorse, I realize they don't know Jesus. And so my thought would be to pray for them that they finally do.
Okay, you've been hurt, but you forgive because you have been forgiven.
Right.
And so the response to those people who have hurt you is to pray for them, love them, forgive them. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
The Holy Spirit helps me do that.
Sure.
And I think,
Sure.
you know, honestly, that is Jesus on the cross, looking out at the people that are yelling and screaming at him and crucify him and enjoying, it seems, the moment of him dying. And he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And that's when we get to that point of understanding true compassion, is being able to see those people that have hurt us through those eyes of Jesus. And you're right. I think it's only through the Holy Spirit that we're able to do that.
Yeah. Two quick comments.
Yeah.
One, the Holy Spirit is the comforter. And so there's that. Father, forgive them. The verb is in the imperfect tense, which means it's continued action. So Jesus did not just say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, and left it at that. This was a prayer that went on and on and on. So while the nails are driven in the hands, Father, forgive them. As they're putting him up on the cross, Father, forgive him. As they taunt him from the audience, Father, forgive them. It just goes on and on and on. And it doesn't seem to be a limit to the forgiveness. What do you say, 70 times 7 maybe?
Maybe a few times.
Yeah. I thought about an illustration when you were talking about forgiveness doesn't include pardon. Chuck Colson, who became a Christian in the process of all of this stuff with Watergate and all, became a Christian, understood that he was forgiven for all of that stuff that he had done, but he still went to prison.
Right.
And he did not begrudge that, because he understood that there was that legally he had a responsibility there. So there's
Consequences.
there are consequences, yeah. And how many of us carry scars on our body that somebody did something to us? You know, it was maybe an accident, but they did something, and we forgave them for that, even if it was an accident. Well, we still have the scar, and we're going to keep those until we get that new body, which looks more attractive the older I get.
There was a hand over here.
Yeah. Somebody else had a question or comment?
I thought there was a hand over there at one point.
Oh, okay.
I just did a Bible study in the grip of Greece, Romans, or in Max Lucado, and I was just thinking the grip is such a good word to use for unforgiveness, and it just captures you and puts you in a grip, that unforgiveness and that situation, and you have to release it and put it in a box and bury it.
Yeah, yeah. The grip of unforgiveness.
The grip of unforgiveness, it will ruin your health, your mental soundness.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect word for it, the grip and the cinch. Just
Because
ruin
when
your whole life.
because when we don't forgive, that person's in charge. Not the Spirit. Okay? Okay, DH. Your list yesterday regarding you might be an old wineskin.
You might have a problem with wineskins.
You might have a problem with wineskins, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd like to have you talk about Paul's injunction that the mature Christian just suck it up. That's my translation of what Paul said. Even be wronged for the sake of the less mature brother or sister and for the gospel.
Right.
And then how do we implement that in a positive way?
How can we be wrong in a positive way?
Or how do we implement that
Yeah.
for the good of my brother or sister?
I touched on that in the conclusion.
I wanted you to touch on it some more because we're killing time here.
Well, and you've seen me die before.
On a bigger stage than this one.
One of the key things, and this has really been a benefit to me over the last how many decades I've served the church, and that is, DH, this isn't your church. You know, people, I remember in one particular case, somebody came up to me when I was still in Tillamook, and they said, is this your church? And they were pointing to the building, and I said, no, it's not my church. Oh, well, I thought you were the pastor here. I says, oh, well, I am, but it's not my church. And I said, really, actually, I'm more like the custodian. I'm more like the custodian. I just kind of keep things running, and we let God try to lead us. I think a lot of the problems that the church has is because we forget who's the owner of the church. And we begin to think that it's our church rather than the Lord's church. And that's why I said He is the Alpha, the Omega, everything in between. And we do well to remember. And I think part of the struggle that so many of us feel is we look to a new generation taking the reins of leadership. And you know, they don't necessarily do things the way we used to do. That's why I said, you may not like the music. And you may not find that the sermons are relevant to you. Maybe they're relevant to somebody else, but maybe not to a senior citizen. You know, and that's why I'm saying you got to remember this is the Lord's church, not yours. And we need to encourage, we need to pray, we need to do those things to allow the church to become what it needs to be. If you've done any traveling interculturally to different countries, you've seen firsthand that Christians worship and serve in different ways all around the world. We can't just be locked into one particular mindset and say, this is appropriate worship. And if you sing this song, it's not appropriate. Well, maybe that song does not speak to your heart. I get that, you know. Some of these new choruses that go over and over and over again, I keep looking at my watch thinking, you know, the Nazarenes are going to beat me to lunch. I mean, but it's the Lord's church, you know, and that's speaking to somebody other than me, perhaps, and hopefully through my participation, it speaks to God. One last thing, and don't anybody from Woodburn repeat this. But Woodburn, I have to say, musically, we have a very special niche in the way we do music. How would you describe it?
Eclectic.
It's eclectic. And I mean, it's country western. He sings train songs about the long black train where Satan's the conductor. Don't ride that train. You know, this kind of stuff. And I don't know of any other church that does that. But I tell you, it's working in Woodburn. And so when we started attending, I'm saying, well, whatever happened to stand up for Jesus? Whatever happened to all hail the power of Jesus' name? We haven't sung any of that kind of stuff. But the people in Woodburn, I mean, I got to tell you, he's speaking their language. And through that language, God is honored. And here's the thing. The more I end up singing that kind of stuff, the more I kind of get into it. and the more that I kind of begin to understand and join in with it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but just remember, it's not my church, it's the Lord's church, and there are lots of different ways to do things. So.
And just to kind of piggyback a little bit on that, you know, there's a mindset, and it starts with our language. Talking about our church, my church, your church. And that's just the way we talk. What church do you go to? and so we have this mindset about the separateness of the church because we all go to our church, our own church, and we don't think about the church. And I feel very fortunate in Woodburn that there's a ministerial association of us that gather each week and we pray together. And it's the Church of God, the Nazarene, the Foursquare, Church of Christ, all coming together, and we're praying together, and we're working together. What can we do in our community to be the church? Understanding that we are all the church, and we don't have a problem amongst ourselves of saying, you know what, how can I support you in your ministry, in your location, with your people? And there may be some transitions of people going from one to the other congregation and everything, and we understand that, and we don't have a problem with that, because sometimes, like for instance, there is a gentleman now that's coming into our congregation because his wife passed away and he was a member of the Church of God, and he just feels like, I can't go there without thinking about her, and I want to be able to worship God. And there's just too many memories, strong memories. And I said, you're welcome to come here for a time until you feel comfortable in going back, or you can welcome to stay here. And I've talked with the pastor there, and he understands it. And so he's done a little bit of transition. He spends a lot of time with us, and every so often he'll go back. But we're all the church. And he's expanded himself to understand we're all the church, and we can all work together, and we can all heal together, and we can encourage one another, and we can join in hands with one another in order to build the kingdom of God in our various locations.
One of the 10 statements about wineskins, remember, was if you view the other Christ-honoring churches in your community as the competition rather than as co-workers, you might have a problem with wineskins. Yeah, it's an exactly. I experienced the same kind of thing, particularly in Tillamook, where I still remain very close friends with many of these pastors, even though I left the church 25 years ago. So, I mean, those bonds are really quite strong. In Turner, the community is so much smaller, but we still participated with the church that was just across the street from us, and our kitty corner, and then a brand new church. They started a brand new church down at Turner Elementary School, and so many of our people were so concerned, oh, we're going to lose people over there. We didn't lose anybody. And then,
But you see, it wasn't anybody getting lost anyway. It was about God.
That's right. He's just kind of taking money out of one pocket and putting it into another. I'm not any richer, you know. The kingdom isn't any bigger.
That's right.
So anyway, they were going to have this, this brand new church was going to have this rummage sale. And of course, they didn't have a building or any place to do it. And so pastor gives me a call. His name is Brad. Brad gives me a call and says, DH, can we hold our rummage sale in your church parking lot? And I'm thinking, why not? The only provision I said was just be sure that, I mean, if you're selling videos and stuff, that they're not X-rated and this kind of stuff. I mean, because it represents both of us. But sure, yeah, that'd be fine. We'll leave the door unlocked so you can have access to the restrooms and so forth. Well, anyway, and the refrigerators are back here if you want to put your lunches in there. And so we did that. And the next thing I knew, they had brought in a little over, I forget how much money it was. They tithed their proceeds to Turner Christian Church. And you think they're competition? Good folks.
Comments? Questions?
No, but I
Rebuttal?
have a story.
Pardon me, please.
I have a story.
Well, stand up and speak loudly.
Can we tell stories at a conference on parables?
It's bearable.
I think it fits in quite well. My husband and I lived in Anchorage in quite a nice, beautiful house, and next door was the Baptist family. Oh, horrors. Baptists lived right next door to us. We were attending the Christian church, and across the street was a nice
house, but they had huge dogs that were messing all over the place and tearing up the yards. And so my husband and I and the wife next door were standing out in the yard wondering what to do. Whether we should call the dog catchers and or the authorities to see if we should have something done about these dogs that were just causing us all kinds of problems. And here comes the wineskins. Her husband comes home and he listens to us complaining about this. He walks over to his garage. He picks up his toolbox. He walks over to the door of the offending family, knocks on the door, and he says, "Can I help you fix your fence?"
That's forgiveness of a sort, isn't it? Yeah,
I thought it was. I thought that was really a good lesson.
you bet. You bet.
Sorry.
No, that's wonderful. That we need and appreciate those kinds of examples of how this is supposed to be worked out in our lives and in our world. Bill Richardson, who taught so many years at Northwest Christian College, used to say when the end of class or toward the end of class, if he would say, "Well, any questions?" And it always bothered him if there were no questions, because he said one of two things is the case. Either I've answered all your questions, which can't possibly be true, or I have confused you so badly that there are you can't think of a question to ask. And so I'm sitting here with some dead air and thinking, my goodness, you have almost 50 minutes to go eat. Linda, save us.
I have a question. I sent the back, I took a picture, technology, took a picture of the back of the bulletin where the write-ups were for both of these men and sent it to my daughter. And she said, "Wow, Mom, they look like twinsies." So my question is, are you guys related in any way?
Not in such a way that we would admit.
Only in Jesus.
That's your wife asking that question.
I can't take her anywhere.
And your daughter.
And my daughter.
Well, if he's related to you, that kind of dilutes the will, too. So you have to be careful about that.
But it does speak to a common background that we've both grown up to, and heritage. And we were both very blessed with the years that we were at Northwest Christian College, at what I consider a very opportune time, with some very great teachers that were there during that time, and then being able to carry on with that and creating some classmates that we both grew close to, and so we have some common friends, and that common heritage has been with us. And as we, I spent 36 years back in Tennessee. We were apart. We didn't have an awful lot of communication back and forth, except when you came back for Emmanuel for a period of time, and we did connect once, I think, while you were there, coming back, and then we pick it back up, and it's like, we still have that common heritage. And it's been great for me personally to come back to that and reconnect again with all of that, all those common friends, and have that commonality again.
We graduated on the same day from the same place. We were ordained on the same day. different
place.
churches. You were Harrisburg, and I was in Sweet Home.
Some
Then
great
he-
churches. I mean,
Yeah.
good congregations.
And we were going through, just going through some old papers and things a while back. And Linda came across a little congratulations card when our first child was born, congratulating us on the birth of Peter and so forth. And it was signed Cheryl Smith. Yeah. So yeah, we've been together. And when I go back to Emmanuel, I was on the Associate of Christian Education there. We would kind of connect. So what the thing is that we're kind of a product of the same place, and that's one of the reasons I personally appreciated Woodburn so much, because I'm getting not just biblical content, but an attitude about the scriptures that comes from the same place that I come from. And I appreciate that. I was talking to Brian Wilhite yesterday about influences and how I feel the influence of Alger Fitch percolating up within me sometimes when I'm speaking. I feel the influence of Bill Richardson. I've often said, and I'll close with this, that Alger gave me a heart for ministry, that Bill Richardson gave me a heart for scholarship, and Herb Works, who had the missions program, gave me a heart for the world. And when you put those three things together, I can't imagine a better undergraduate education. So I was really blessed.
We really stand, and I'll let you ask your question, so don't forget it. But I followed David Fitch at Woodburn, and I feel so blessed, because David really set down a foundation there that allowed me to come and build upon that foundation that he laid there. And I feel like I'm very fortunate, having come back, that I continue to work in the kingdom, building on a foundation of what so many have done in this area. So many great men and women who have sacrificed and have laid a foundation for us to be able to build upon that. And that's what you do, all right? You lay that foundation for the next generation. And I appreciated what DH was saying last night, especially at the end, is God needs you. He needs each and every one of us to continue to lay that foundation for the next generation after us to follow us as they lay the foundation, and we continue to build that heritage and everything. Okay.
I was just wondering what year it was that you left NCC.
78. We graduated at an end of an era, because that was the year that Alger went down to Pacific Christian College. Bill went east.
He went with me
to Tennessee.
Yeah.
Right.
He said, "You didn't get enough. I need to follow you there."
Barton Dowdy retired that year. So it really was the end of an era. And then Herb Works went to CMF, I think, a year, maybe 2 years later.
Oh. Well, I wanted to make a comment now that the two of you looking alike and having similar backgrounds and the fellowship that you enjoy, because I wanted to apply that to this group. Because we've got a bunch of people here who come most every year and who appreciate the fellowship, the camaraderie, the encouragement that we get as we're able to meet together here and around those tables in the dining hall, and just the encouragement of that. That's rich, and that's valuable. I'm also a firm believer that it's a bit of a preface to heaven too, but I'm not going to carry that too far. because I don't want to encourage any of us to go anytime soon. But I think there's some truth there, that those relationships are just going to get carried over. And I think that's valuable. All right. Virginia, give me some instruction. Oh. Give me some instruction that I'm willing to listen to.
Are you sure this is wise?
Instruction. You heard it. Okay, Frank, we're heading out for vacation, and I only have 3 quilt shops on my list. So, Denise, how many should I have?
Oh, at least 6 or 8.
Instruction.
I was not thinking in that context.
You did not specify.
That is true. That is true. But can we dismiss these folk early so they can get their morning snack and come back here by 10:45?
Yes,
Okay.
do it.
10:45. You have 43 minutes. Okay? Be back here at 10:45, and Mike is going to make his third and final presentation. Thank you, folk, for your participation. Thank you for your good attention and for your questions and comments. Bless you all.